Today we're going to be checking out the Jackery Explorer 5000 Plus. We'll also be testing out Jackery's Solar Saga 500 watt solar panels. This unit also has wheels, so it is portable. It also comes with a telescoping handle, 12 volt socket, USB-C ports, USB-A ports, 420 volt outlets, AC expansion port for the smart transfer switch, L1430 plug for 30 amps of output, also a 50 amp plug, but this is also only going to provide 30 amps of output. You also have 4 AC reset buttons. DC expansion ports, so you can expand this up to 30 kilowatts just for one unit. AC charging port. You also have the door. This allows for 2 solar inputs, also high solar input, and a solar disconnect. The Jackery also has one handle underneath, that way 2 people could carry this. Okay, now when you do get this out of the box, this is all you get. You get a manual and you get this little tool right here. This is for your MC4 connectors. So you can pop the MC4s on and off of the little side panel, and then you get your charging cord, which this only provides up to 1800 watts. Now this is a Champion 4500 watt generator, but it only produces 3500 watts max total output on gasoline. This has a 7200 watt inverter, so that means it puts out more than double the amount of power that this does. So you need 2 of these in order to get the 7200 watts that this can put out. Not to mention this is ultra quiet and has a huge solar input. So if you were running loads of, let's say, 6000 watts, you would need 2 of these inverter generators to be able to produce this. Or if you wanted the max output, you would need again 2 of these to be able to do what just one of these does. Not to mention the surge capacity of this is 14,400 watts, which is a lot. That's still going to be way more than this generator could do, or 2 of them could do. So I'm going to run you through some scenarios on this unit on home backup power, and also if you were going to use this on your RV, that's something you can do as well, because again, that is getting very popular, using power stations like this in an RV setting because it makes it so easy. You simply plug it in and go, and you're done. Now the Jackery Explorer 5000 Plus is a 5 kilowatt hour battery or 5040 watt hours. I did do an AC capacity test at a 0.2 C rate. This ended up lasting for a little more than 4 hours and ended up providing over 4,300 watt hours of capacity. This ended up being 85.5% efficient, which is what most of us like to see in the industry. And when it comes to charging, most of the time I would see about 1650 to 1700 watts charging, and this can also vary depending on the outlet that you plug it into. And when it comes to charging this unit, it ended up needing 5750 watt hours to fully charge it, which is perfectly acceptable. Now I did do an AC standby test. This is simply a test where you turn the unit on, turn on the AC inverter just to see how much power is lost by letting it idle. Now after 11 hours and 55 minutes, it only lost 11% of the energy, which is actually really good for a large inverter and also battery of this size. I did do DC testing as well, checking the 12 volt socket, as this is rated for 126 watts, which this easily passed a 10-minute test. I also checked for max output, and I found that I could easily get 150 watts with a max of 155 by the time it would shut off. Okay, let's see if it does a diesel heater, because this is one of the things I do like using in the winter time. Turn on our 12 volt. Now depending on the diesel heater you have, not every 12 volt socket is going to work, because some of the older diesel heaters require a lot more power to fire them up. But the newer ones, such as this H-calorie unit, this is actually a lot more efficient, doesn't draw nearly as much wattage. So let's see if it fires this one up. And away we go. So now we'll see how much wattage this actually draws out of here. Most of the time these diesel heaters will draw about 150 or less. And there we go. That only took about less than 2 minutes to fire this one up. I do like this one because the startup procedure is much faster than some of the older ones that I've had. And with this thing running at full high position, only using about 40-45 watts, give or take, as it kind of fluctuates back and forth. Now with the diesel heater on medium, look at that, only about 20 watts in the hours. It says 99.8, it won't go any higher, but obviously to run that, it'll charge up all your other little DC devices. But that is one cool thing about diesel heaters, that they really consume just very minimal energy. They'll run forever on a small battery supply, and then if you have this hooked up to solar, pretty much would run that thing non-stop as long as you keep it full. Now when it does come to your AC output, you get 120 volts and 20 amps out of one of these ports. Now because these two are connected to one side of the inverter and these are connected to another side of the inverter, you only get 20 amps out of each side, or you get 3600 watts or 30 amps out of two of these, because you get one leg and then the second leg for the total of 7200 watts. Now because I'm only using one plug on one side of the inverter, I can pull 20 amps, versus if I use both plugs, I only get 30 amps instead of 40. But during this test, I was able to provide 2500 watts of power and the voltage looked good. I was able to also run this all the way up to the 3000 watt mark before it finally shut off. Now I did test both outlets for max output, and this was able to hold this load no problem. It didn't have any problem holding it for over 10 minutes, and it ended up not popping any of the side breakers. It then proceeded to go closer to max load with both sides of the inverter going using all 4 plugs, also checking the app just to make sure it was accurate. And I ended up having no problem running this heat gun along with several other loads for several minutes. Now there is something you need to know when charging and running loads at the same time. You only get a 1500 watt pass through. So this means you have 1500 watts total to operate with. So if you have a 1000 watt load, that means the other 500 watts is going to go into charging the battery. But if you have a 1500 watt load, this means all the power is going to pass from the wall through the unit and onto the item, and no power will go to charging the battery. And when you run loads higher than 1500 watts while doing pass-through or charging this from, let's say, a gas generator, then if your load exceeds 1500 watts, it will then shut off.
For contacting Jackery, please listen carefully to all of the following choices as our menu options may have changed. For product or order-related technical support, please press 3.
Thanks for contacting Jackery. Speaking, how can I help you?
Yeah, hi. I had a couple questions about a Jackery unit that I have, and I was wondering, they're kind of technical questions, wondering if you could help me with that.
Sure, yeah.
Okay, so I have a Jackery 5000. It's the Explorer 5000 Plus, kind of the new big one that came out. And so what I'm wondering, this has 120 volt charging, but it doesn't have 240 volt charging unless you buy the transfer switch that you guys have, the smart transfer switch. But I'm wondering if there's an adapter that you guys have that does 240 volt charging that will go in place of that slot that's on the side, or do you guys know if you're making one, or do you have one?
Unfortunately, no, and we don't recommend using an adapter. The system can accept only 120 volts, like from the cable. So that will take 4 hours in 1800 watts.
I don't want to do the transfer switch. I would rather just have this, but I would like the faster charging that the transfer switch provides. Do you know?
I understand. Okay, well, at this moment, we do not have a kind of plug that can adapt this, or we are not designing as far as we have the information till now. But I can get in touch with the technical department directly and the team and ask them just to double check. Then I can send you a text message if you receive text messages.
Yeah, and that's fine. I do have one more question on a smart transfer switch. Okay, so when you have the Jackery 5000 and the smart transfer switch, it says 120 volt charging, you know, the little cord that you plug into the wall. It says that is disabled.
Yeah, because when it's connected to the transfer switch.
So what I'm wondering though is, if the power goes out in my home, can I use a generator and still charge on the 120 volt plug, or is that still disabled because it sees that it's connected to the smart transfer switch?
That will be disabled because it sees that it's connected to the smart transfer switch. But if you are trying to charge it from, let's say, a gas generator or gasoline generator, that part I will need to check with the team and see if we can some kind of way force it so we can be charging and discharging at the same time using this method. For this one, I will need to double check as well. I am not 100% sure.
Okay, yeah, that'd be great.
Absolutely. I will get in touch with Mike, and as soon as I get his answer, I'll make sure to forward it to you. And I can use the same phone number you are calling from?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. All right, then I think it's not going to take that long, maybe in the next hour or so. But anyhow, I'll keep you posted.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Welcome. You have a good day.
You too. Yeah, bye. That would be crazy if they get back to me like even today. That would, most companies, they're 24 hours, 48 hours before they even get you some information back. And a lot of times it's hard to get a hold of anybody who's going to, oh yeah, let me get back to you in an hour or two. So pretty cool, right? Now, Jackery did come out with these new Solar Saga 500-watt solar panels. These were packaged extremely well, and they are a bifacial panel, and each one of these is 85 watts each. This is also extremely lightweight, and when you do open the other box, you will find out, well, it looks like there's going to be some assembly required as you get screws, a screwdriver. You also get a really long cord, so we'll see how this works. But after everything is out of the bags, tons of brackets, tons of screws, and also some anchors, which I found out this will need some assembly, which did take some time, but they do give you this cool little compass. Now each one of these solar panels will come with a nice carrying case. It'll also come with a pouch that way you can put all of your anchors in it, along with the cables and more. Now when it does come to your solar input, you have 2 low voltage, which these need 16 volts to turn on and a max is 60 and can handle 10.5 amps, or a total of 1200 watts at 21 amps. Your high voltage, this ends up being a turn on of 135 or 450 max with 4000 watts max total solar input between both sides. Now because you can put 500 watts into each one of those inputs on the side, this means you can plug these in, which are 500 watt solar Sagas from Jackery. These are actually bifacial panels. Each one of these panels is 85 watts because each one of these is basically like, it's a 49 volt panel, but they're really low amps at only about 2.17. And each one of these parallels together, so each one also acts independently. So if you shade one panel, the rest of them still work, which is totally different than what most solar panels do. And because a lot of power stations are going with that 60 volt limit, this basically brings you to a 50 volt input, but by the time you add up all the amperage together, because you're going to be putting these in parallel, which adds all the amperage together, it's going to end up bringing you right to about 13 amps. So it ends up being a pretty good system that matches up really well with the Jackery. Now I did go outside and set up these solar panels, which there's not really a lot of instruction. You just basically set them up, put them into position, and then basically plug them in. Okay, so both of those right now are just set up. I threw them out there. There's not really any indicator on, which way is best. Do you line it up with the sun, like in lengthwise, or do you go side to side? There's not really any instructions. It just kind of, tells you maybe to face it south or something, but which way, obviously. So we're going to see which one's putting out more power. As we take a look at the app, 510 watts on the app, which matches the screen on the front, 510, 512. So now let's unplug one of these and see which one's doing more work. So unplug this top one. This top one is going to be the one that's on the right over there. That one kind of more of a lengthwise and not side to side. So now that is the only one plugged in. Let's see what we got. So 251 watts. So we were getting 500. So that means that they're both, because of the angles, they're both putting out 250 each. So that's pretty interesting that they're doing the exact same amount of power as far as the way that they're angled. Let's plug this back in, and just for fun, we will take out the bottom one, which now the one on the left is disconnected right there. And then the one that's going lengthwise, I guess, is going to be the one that's putting out the power. And look at that, just slightly more. This one's doing 260. Really weird, right? These panels are definitely different because it seems like no matter how you throw them out there, you just get 250 watts maybe, because that would make sense, obviously. You have one panel in the sun, one panel in the sun, one panel in the sun, and then the other ones are just kind of a little bit in the back, right? So it's like 250 watts no matter how you do it. You throw them out there, you just get 250 consistently all day, no matter what. You don't have to properly angle them or anything. Okay, now I have them both going the same, just to give you an idea. Look how much sun is on each side. So sun on that one, a decent amount on that one. Most of these are all pretty much lit up, so, and they're both approximately at the same angle. I'm not getting real critical, but this just kind of gives you an idea that if you put them both this way, do we get anything extra? Well, it really doesn't look like it. We're still kind of getting the same. We went up a little bit, about 512 to 530. Again, as the day goes, we are going to get more power, but it just seems like you're going to get at least 250 watts regardless of how you set these up, you know. So 250 out of each. I'll change them around one more time and see if it changes. And if we also take a look at this light meter here, just to show you, because when you're doing this testing, it says if you want to follow STC guidelines, that means you're following standard test conditions and you're getting at least 1,000 watts meter square on your solar panels, and the temperature is supposed to be 77 degrees. Well, now that's not really real world, is it? So this is real world, is just throwing it out here and hoping for the best. But we are pretty close to about, you know, being lined up with this. As you can see, there is a little bit of a shadow if I was to move them a little bit and then get them a little bit more angled. But one thing I found is that when I was angling these a little bit more, I kind of made the angle sharper, but it ended up casting a small shadow right there. Now I could do a sharper angle if I turn them side to side, but that really wouldn't help, would it? So you kind of just throw them out here is what it seems. And like I said, you hope for the best. And so now with both of them going kind of lengthwise, angled directly at the sun, if we take a look here, we've pretty much got the same numbers. Interesting, right? So 524, 550s, or 530 is kind of where we were at. So one thing that's nice about these solar panels is that you don't really have to guess, it seems like. You throw them out there and you go. But the only problem is that those are supposed to be 500 watt panels, right? So the only thing is that you're missing out on a lot of opportunity for extra energy that could be produced. Out of a 500 watt panel, we should be getting at least 400 each. So that's one thing that I'm kind of worried about, is that how do you possibly get that unless you do the balcony system, or unless you were to maybe set these up on a fence? It gives you that opportunity, or you just set it up like this. But I don't know. So you guys have to let me know your thoughts on these solar panels, because cool idea, definitely different. It's hard to get really max power if you're just using them out in the field.
Now the Jackery 5000 can be hooked up to your home with a generator inlet box, and then simply plugging in your main power cord and then plugging into the Jackery 5000 and then flipping an interlock connection. Now you can also use a smart transfer switch offered by Jackery. This is more of an automated system, which then you can assign certain circuits of your home to power up as needed. You can control all this through the smart app, not to mention also charging times for time of use when the power is cheaper. This also makes it for more full automations to keep you powered up. And you can even complement the system by adding a lot of solar to it, which I'll show you a demonstration here.
Okay, so right now I'm hooked up to my solar that's on the roof, and you can see it's still pumping in a lot. Oops, sorry, let's press this button over here, but still getting in 3,500 watts of solar plus more, which this will peak out in a little bit all the way to 4,000. I've had to do that a couple times with the array that's on the house, but I now have this hooked up to my home on this transfer switch. So up here, I have all these assigned to different sections in my house. So what you can see over here is everything that I have assigned at the moment, which I have a 20 amp outlet outside. That's gonna be for a hybrid EV vehicle. And then I have the furnace, which that's the blower right there. I also have my washing machine, my fridge and oven, TV. Basically this covers most of everything in the kitchen. Then I also have the whole garage that's in here, which is the lights right now. And then I also have the garbage disposal, hot water heater that's under there, and dishwasher, and everything in the living room. So we're gonna turn these on one by one, simulating a blackout basically, and then this is gonna run everything. Now before we do that, we wanna make sure we turn our AC inverter on, and then we should see this pop up with 120 and 240. And so now that we are powered and ready to go, we're gonna switch over some stuff. Now, at the moment, we're gonna turn on this one right here to the generator side. And so that's also going to control my mini split. We're going to turn this on, and that turns on the mini split that's right over there, because I have that running off of either this right here, which is normally powered up by all the solar, or I have it running off the solar itself. I have one of those hybrid mini splits, and they are amazing. So I'll show you it here in a second. You'll see our output start to kick up here in just a second or so. And so just to show you, this EG4 is an awesome hybrid mini split. This runs off 120 volts, and you can plug solar directly into it. And you would need about 400 watt panels kind of as a minimum. 5 and 6 does a lot better, especially when you get into the low light in the morning and the low light in the afternoon. So now you can see the mini split is up and running. It's gonna go all the way up to about 1,000 watts pretty soon. After it gets fully going, we'll come back and check that, but we'll turn on some more loads. And if you can see right here, this also says 500 watts. That's on the mini split. We're gonna go ahead and turn on the furnace, but that won't really do much. We're gonna turn all of these on and then go start turning on things. You also saw the lights flicker, that's the garage. Turn this on, and now the living room. So we'll see if the refrigerator is kind of up and running. We'll turn on some other items as well. Now at the moment, the washer's not on, so that's not taking any power. But let's say we wanted to fire up our little air fryer. We'll turn this on. It's gonna start pulling a bunch of power. If we come down here now, look at that. So 1,800 watts almost being pulled. Now I do have a hot water heater that's underneath here. So right now you can see we're only pulling 1,700 watts, but this heater is gonna kick on in just a second, and this will pull an additional 1,500 watts as well. And there it goes. As you can see, we are using 3,100 watts. We are still making more than what we're using, so far doing well. And this is just a small little water heater. It'll only run for about 6 to 7 minutes and then it shuts off, so it actually doesn't use that much energy. I also run one of these small little kettles as well, and I can even run this little fireplace for a little bit of ambiance, and it even provides heat out of the vents up there. Now I did turn off the air fryer, basically just exchanging it for this, as each one will draw about 1,300 to 1,400 watts. Now even though we're not using the smart transfer switch, you can still utilize it like this with a standard transfer switch. This also allows you to have really two options. You have the backup power, and you can also load shed. Load shedding is becoming very popular just due to the fact that energy rates are consistently going up. So by providing a little bit of solar outside, you can stop using power from the grid and start using a system like this. Then you start running the loads that I just talked about, basically from the solar, and then you are using less energy from the grid. Now sure, there is a little bit of an investment in this, but by doing that, by load shedding, you are actually having this starting to pay for itself. Versus just sitting here and waiting for a power outage, you could actually be using this, having it pay for itself over time, and eventually this could pay for itself in about 3 to 4 years. That's about what a normal home solar system is going to take, is about 4 to 7 years until you get a payback on it. With energy rates consistently going up, something like this is going to become more popular across the board for a lot of people because you're no longer just being dependent on the grid. So by load shedding, you're getting both of those options for emergency backup power and also lowering your overall energy bill. Okay, so now we're going to use a Jackery as if we were simulating camping in this 50 amp RV. Now you could still use that in a 30 amp RV. It really doesn't matter. So at the moment the trailer is on, just sitting idle. There's actually nothing turned on inside that is using power from this. The converter is off and everything, so just the trailer systems only uses about 40 watts, plus you have a little bit of waste from the inverter from the unit. Now if we take a look right here, that's our waveforms for both sides. You're going to see leg 1, leg 2 on here, and we will check this just to see if it gets distorted at all, but right now it looks clean, pure sine wave. That's what we're looking for. And then we're also going to measure our total harmonic distortion, which everybody talks about clean power, right? So we're always looking for 5%, roughly 8% is kind of the maximum you want to see. You really want to see 5% and below, depending on the unit that you're using. So what we're going to do is keep an eye on this, make sure we stay at 5% and below, and we'll see how well it does under full loads along with a pure sine wave. Okay, so on we go. The first thing we're going to do is come over here to our AC unit. This one here, the main one, is a 15K AC unit. It does have a soft start, so it makes it to where we are kind of cheating a little bit. But I do recommend them because they will save your generators. They also make it to where the life of your AC unit lasts longer because of the compressor, and also it can help out the Jackery or other onboard systems you might use to power up your RV. All right, so we'll turn this on and keep an eye on the power there. You'll see that come on real quick. So fan comes on, which you always want to try to start on low. Make sure no other loads are on. And then boom, there we go. We're going to have the wattage kick up. You're going to see on the little meter there. And you can see that we're already up and running. Now it is a pretty warm day already, and just in the shade we're about 81 degrees. So I have this little meter right here. You can see that just says 81.1, which heat robs power, just so you guys know. Anytime you introduce heat, it is going to rob power from everything. It doesn't matter if it's your car, this unit here, your AC units, everything else. Heat is the robber of all things. So right now an easy load is 1600 watts. Sine wave looks good. You'll see these little kind of kicks right here. That right there should be the power as it goes through the motor of the air conditioner. And right now, if we look at our distortion, only 2.2%, which is what we want. All right, now as we come in here, this is a 13.5K AC unit. Go ahead and watch the screen. We're gonna turn this on low, give it just a second or two. Then we're gonna go ahead and turn it on low cool. Go over here, that'll be low cool. Go ahead and watch the meter. You're gonna see this one kick on in just a few seconds, and we'll see how many watts both of them are drawing. Okay, so now we have that one on, we have the second one on, and so far so good. We have ourselves minimal voltage drop, so we're just gonna go ahead and start turning on a bunch more things and not kind of mess around looking at the unit yet, because we can see all the information on the screen. So what we're gonna do is turn on our electric heater. This guy here can pull about 1200 watts roughly, and you always want to make sure you have water in the electric heater because you will burn out the elements. So we'll turn that on. Now you're going to see the wattage go way up on the one side. So there's 2500 watts right there, and another 1500 for the main AC unit, which my main AC unit can draw about 1700 watts in the peak summer. And so now we have a total of 4000. You can obviously see it's not going to last very long just with this, because there is no solar plugged into it, but our pure sine waves look good on both legs. And if we also take a look at the total harmonic distortion, only 2.4%, so doing excellent. So far, you have to admit, this is a pretty impressive unit. The amount of power I've been able to draw out of this, and it just kind of keeps going. So we're gonna turn on some more stuff, see if we can get this thing to distort some, because we're getting close to full, but not yet. Okay, so now we're going to come down here and turn on the converter. This is what's going to power up and charge up your batteries and run like the house lights inside your RV. I always suggest leaving this off, and if you can, charge the house battery with solar, and you'll never really have to have that on. So let's go ahead and turn this on, and we should see our power kick up over there. Line 1 goes up to 21, but we're going to press our little fast speed button right here. This is going to boost charge it. So that's going to probably bring it up another couple hundred watts, but we are pretty full, so maybe not. Let me press it one more time just to see. Yeah, my batteries are already pretty full because, again, they're pretty much charging up from solar. But while we're here, we're going to turn on this famous little heater. I've had this thing for years. Going to press this little button right over here. Boop. Then you'll see the power draw start to come up a little bit more. I use this one basically inside my bathroom. I've been using these for like 5 years. Everybody always freaks out, it's a fire hazard, but now all of a sudden they're becoming popular. It dries my towels inside my RV, and not to mention it keeps it nice and warm in here, and it's perfect for little rooms like this. That's really about it. It's only 350 watts, so it isn't going to do a whole bunch. Now speaking of heaters, here's another one. I'm going to pop that guy on as well. This one I don't like as much because it doesn't have a cool down feature. It's either on or it's off, and this one's 400 watts. So now as we get closer to our max at 5400 watts, and check out the wave, just a little bit of distortion there, which I bet those are pretty much from the heaters. That's what you're gonna see those electric heaters doing, I bet. That's the elements, because if you look at our distortion, 2.5. So not everything is always as it seems with just the waves. That's why we always want to check this as well, just to make sure that, you know, what we're seeing is accurate. So if we turn off the heaters, I bet you'll see that go away, because that's probably the heating element. And we might as well turn on the refrigerator. We're going to turn this on to AC. So this is going to draw about 350 watts. These ones that do propane and electric are definitely not efficient on the electric side, but when it comes to propane side, I like having both. That's why I kind of haven't switched it. But man, when it's on propane, it just sips energy, and it sips propane. And because we have nothing else to do, we'll go ahead and fire this up. So 45 seconds, see if it could just warm up our cup of tea in there. Bam, away it goes. Wow, look at that. Didn't even really flinch. Our voltage still looks great. Now look at that. We are pretty much maxed out, 7200 watts. Waveform still looks good. It's the same as before. And look at the distortion, still at 2.6, so doing excellent. This so far has been a really good unit. There's really only a couple things that I could, you know, kind of pick this apart on, which we'll talk about at the end, and there it went. But overall, this unit so far has been doing very well. It's done great. The reason it shut off, obviously, if you look at the numbers, we're definitely pulling too much watts on one leg, so that's why this ended up shutting off. But typically, again, you're not trying to overload these things, but it can do it, and it pulled way over the 3600 watts that you get per side, because remember, these two are together, so you get the 36 here, you get 36 there, but it does have to be balanced or else it will shut off if you're trying to pull too much from one leg. But let's close up. Okay, thoughts on this new unit. Now, remember the phone call that we did earlier, so I ended up calling them around 10:30, 10:45 a.m. and they actually got back to me at 2 p.m. Now it does say right here, according to the questions that I asked, is there 240 volt charging like an adapter like some other power stations have? Unfortunately, they said it's not an option at this time. I don't even know if they're going to make a 240 volt adapter to be able to charge this thing. Now, as far as the smart transfer switch, and say the power goes out, well, obviously it's not going to charge itself because, well, the power is gone. So then what you're going to have to do is basically you're going to have a generator inlet box, pretty much like you normally would when the power goes out. You end up flipping your disconnect, then you slide up your interlock, turn on your generator power, and so that's going to end up providing you the power basically to this thing through that smart transfer switch. And you'll have to wire that up, obviously, but since you're there, that's something you'd probably do anyway. So that'll be the only way you can get the 240 volt charging, or at least 120 volts on each leg to charge this up at a faster rate. Now, as far as pros go, you really can't beat the price on this thing. It is crazy how well Jackery prices these things as far as the competition that's in the market. And I'll leave information down below, that way you guys can check out where to get it, do some shopping if you want, along with a discount code. And not to mention, another pro is that this thing is able to definitely put out the power it suggested. It's clean power, and it definitely exceeded expectations as far as the amount of power that was able to go out of this inverter. And when it comes to how quiet this was, as far as charging at 4,000 watts of solar almost, not to mention putting loads on it, this is just as quiet as basically all the other leading brands out there. So you're not going to worry about this one making excessive fan noise. Now, when it comes to cons on this unit, there are a couple, like basically the pass-through. The pass-through charging only allows for 1500 watts, and it will shut everything down if you start to charge this. So let's say you are running a 3000 watt load, and then you go to take your generator and charge this up. Well, it's going to shut everything down, basically start charging it to 1500 watts. Now, if you have a 1000 watt load, that means only 500 watts is going to go into this thing to charge it. So when it comes to AC charging at only 1800 watts, or when it comes to the pass-through charging at 1500 watts, that's something I would like to definitely see improved. Or what I would like to see is the 1800 watts, but your load still being able to be ran, because if you're going to run anything over 1500 watts, you can't. It's not going to do it. Now, in order to get around that 1500 watt pass-through, you would have to do like an AC to DC converter, something that looks a little bit like this. You would take AC power from your generator, basically run it through this. It's going to provide DC power out that you would then put into your solar, because this allows AC and DC charging at the same time. So I can pump 4000 watts into this thing and still run all the max loads I want. Hence, this is one way we kind of get around that option, because it's common in other power stations as well. Now, this one doesn't do very much. This one's only 600 watts, but there are other ones, and I can leave some information down below where you can check out AC to DC converters. That way, if you want to pump a lot of power into this, you can. So check the information below. Now, one of the other things I would like to see improved is really in the app. I would like to be able to see my solar input from solar number 1, solar number 2, and then also being able to see your main solar input. So that would give you 3 inputs total from low voltage 1 and 2, and then also your high voltage input. That way you can kind of see what each one is doing. Those are just little things, which they may even be able to add that in the future. But overall, it's a good power station. It really did very well. It's a strong inverter. It's super clean power. And again, I only really have a couple of those cons, which is I'd like to see a faster charging rate, because imagine putting one more battery on here and then you have a 10 kilowatt system. Well, charging at 1800 watts is definitely going to take a long time unless you have solar, or you're going to be hooked up to that smart transfer switch. But overall, you guys are going to have to let me know, do you like the Jackery and also the pricing of it? This thing is amazingly priced, and of course, they do always have good deals. And the customer support is pretty much one of the best when it comes to power stations out there. So let me know your thoughts. I hope you liked the video, and I hope to see you in another one.